Hi, and welcome to Teen Kids News. I'm Lila. We've got a lot to cover in this week's show, so let's get started. Here's our top story. If you like football, imagine getting front row seats to watch the Kansas City Chiefs. Or if you're an aspiring dancer, wouldn't it be a dream come true to meet Misty Copeland from the America Ballet Theatre? And if you're into chamber music, who better to get up close and personal with than the world-famous Emerson String Quartet?
The Emerson String Quartet has been making music for almost 5 decades. It first started back in 1976 at Manhattan's prestigious Juilliard School of Music. Violin students Eugene Drucker and Phil Zetzer co-founded the group. Violist Larry Dutton joined shortly after. Cellist Paul Watkins is the newest member. He joined in 2013. Over the years, they've played concerts around the world, released more than 30 albums, and won 9 Grammys. But now the quartet is getting ready to take their final bow. They are retiring as a group to go their separate ways. Teen Kids News was invited to one of the very last Emerson concerts, to be performed here at the Reformed Church of Bronxville in New York. Also invited are these 4 teens. They're all students at Concordia Conservatory, a highly respected music school in Bronxville, New York.
Very good.
Like other music students from across the community, they were treated to free tickets to tonight's historic performance. But they're also getting the rare privilege to actually meet the Emersons.
Looking forward to meeting the Emerson String Quartet because they're obviously very legendary, multiple Grammy Awards. It's like seeing Derek Jeter or Babe Ruth's last at bat. It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
And they're super inspiring to violinists or just musicians in general like me, and I'm really excited to see them.
I've seen them play when I was little, so I would like to see them again, so I'm very excited.
The reason why I wanted to come was because they're such an amazing group, and I just want to see them play the final bow.
So you're conservatory students?
Yeah.
What do you play?
I play the violin.
What's your name?
I'm Leah.
Leah, okay.
I play the guitar, and my name is Shay.
I'm Roscoe, and I also play the violin.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Nico. I also play the violin. Yeah.
Cool. So do you guys play together at all?
We haven't so far.
No,
You should try.
maybe
Yeah,
they'll
we could be a chamber group.
collab. So how did you guys all come to know each other and create this quartet?
Well, that's a good question for you guys.
Phil and I met each other when we were students at the Juilliard School many, many years ago. Some years before the quartet became a professional group. And we just sort of evolved gradually into professional ensemble.
Even though there was less than an hour to the start of the concert, the Emersons took time to share personal stories and answer questions.
Thank you.
Okay, good luck to all of you.
Yeah, good luck. Enjoy it.
Keep it up. Keep up the good work. Yes.
It must have been especially exciting to have front row seats to watch the quartet rehearse. With rehearsal done, it was time to get ready for the big concert. Despite the heavy rain, the church was packed for the special performance. final bow concert began with a string quartet by Mozart, followed by Shostakovich, then Beethoven, and for an encore, a bit more Beethoven.
Honestly, the mixed and different emotions that come through the strings, it's amazing and wonderful.
It was so inspiring for me, to become professional. I just want to be just like these guys.
By the way, the quartet named themselves after a man who didn't write music, but rather poetry and essays. Ralph Waldo Emerson lived in Massachusetts back in the 1800s. As violinist Eugene Drucker says, "We chose the name because we liked what Ralph Waldo Emerson stood for." A strong believer in social reform, Emerson had a profound impact on early American culture, especially in the arts. And the same can be said for the quartet bearing his name. After almost 50 years of masterful performances, the Emerson String Quartet may have taken their final bow, but their place in musical history will certainly live on. For Teen Kids News, I'm Katarina.
We still have a lot more to tell you about. Teen Kids News will be right back. They have wheels and handlebars and look like giant toys. But as Jack reports, ATVs are not a thing to play around with.
They're called all-terrain vehicles because they can go just about anywhere. On grass and dirt, on sand, through mud, they even seem to be able to fly. Sure, racing around on ATVs can be fun, but in some ways, they can be more dangerous than cars. That's because they don't have seatbelts or protections like sidewalls or roll bars. They also are more unstable than cars and can tip easily, throwing off riders. That's what happened to Paige Clooney. The ATV she was on hit a hole and suddenly rolled over, throwing Paige to the ground.
After the accident, when I went to the hospital, I had a concussion, and due to the bones in my head being broken, I actually bursted an eardrum and I lost all the hearing in my left ear.
Paige was in the hospital for 2 weeks before doctors felt she was well enough to go home. Paige was lucky. The government reports that a surprising number of kids are killed each year riding ATVs. Nationwide Children's Hospital found that across the country, an average of 31 kids a day are rushed to emergency rooms with head and neck injuries. And if you've heard that kids are more resilient than adults and just bounce back pretty easily from things like ATV accidents, listen to this.
Children are injured and die at much higher proportions than adults do. They're at much higher risk.
And yet, there are no national guidelines for how old you need to be to drive an ATV. Some states allow kids as young as 8 to operate these fast and powerful machines.
Children under 12 accounted for nearly half of the injuries seen in our study.
And this is an age that simply shouldn't be on an ATV.
Experts recommend that you should be at least 16. You can reduce your risk of getting hurt by following some common sense guidelines. First of all, stay off paved roadways. Even though they can go almost as fast as cars, ATVs are designed to travel off-road, so avoid riding on streets or, heaven forbid, on highways. No matter where you're riding, you should ride alone. Having a passenger makes it harder to properly control an ATV.
The top 3 things that a rider on an ATV should wear are a helmet, and a helmet.
That's because head injuries are so common and often preventable if you're wearing a good helmet. But there's other protective gear you should wear. Goggles, gloves, and sturdy boots that cover your ankles. Paige still rides every now and then, but she's never forgotten the lesson she learned. ATVs need to be handled with care. They can quickly turn dangerous.
Realizing how easy it is to get hurt, I think put that into perspective. We do still like to ride, and we just make sure we're being safe when we do it.
As they say, safety is no accident. You need to plan to be safe, and you need to be constantly alert. That's why I think ATVs should also stand for Always Think Vigilance. I like that. For Teen Kids News, I'm Jack.
We've got to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more Teen Kids News. Every state has one, but most of us don't know why they look the way they do. Here's Eric with Flag Facts.
The flag for Washington State has a unique color. It also has unique origins, linking it to a box of cough syrup. Author Randy Howe has this week's dose of flag history.
Washington State is unique for 2 reasons. It's the only green flag of the 50 states, and it is also the only flag to include the image of a person on it, and obviously that person is George Washington. And it's from the portrait that was painted by Gilbert Stuart. He was an artist from Rhode Island, and it's the most famous portrait of George Washington. But there were brothers who were put in charge of creating the image for the flag, and they went about designing it, coming up with all the different lettering. They had it perfect, except the image they had of George Washington came from a box of cough syrup, and it just wouldn't do. And in the 11th hour, they found Gilbert Stuart's portrait of George Washington. They put it on the flag. It was accepted by the legislators in Washington, and we still have that flag today.
That's this week's Flag Facts. I'm Eric.
She was one of the most powerful women in the ancient world. Starting in 51 BCE, Cleopatra ruled Egypt for 21 years. But despite being the queen of the Egyptians, Cleopatra wasn't an Egyptian herself. She was actually Greek. That's because her dynastic line stretched back to Ptolemy, a Greek general under Alexander the Great. When Alexander died, his empire was carved up between his 4 generals. Taking Egypt, Ptolemy declared himself a pharaoh and started the Ptolemaic dynasty. That's why all the rulers in Egypt after Ptolemy were Greeks. In fact, Cleopatra was the first pharaoh in about 300 years to speak the Egyptian language. She was also the last Ptolemy to rule. After her lover Mark Antony, the Roman general, not Mark Antony the salsa singer, was defeated in the naval battle of Actium, Cleopatra committed suicide. While history knows her simply as Cleopatra, she was officially Cleopatra VII. Guess 7 wasn't her lucky number. For Teen Kids News, I'm Alexandra.
Driving. It's not just a privilege, it's a responsibility. And to help you drive responsibly, the National Road Safety Foundation produced this video.
I love this song. And you can rock and roll with an attitude. So good, so fresh, just the way you like it. Just the way you like it.
Hey, watch it.
Hey, watch it. Get up on your feet, this is a shakedown.
The NRSF produces lots of terrific safety videos each year. To get more info, like, follow, and subscribe to the National Road Safety Foundation. Teen Kids News will be right back. The famous astronomer Galileo said that we can't understand the world around us without first understanding math. What Galileo didn't say was that seeing math in action can be surprisingly fun. Scott tells us more.
The National Museum of Mathematics welcomes visitors of all ages 7 days a week.
They make like games, and you're learning and you don't even notice.
So people think that math is just about, numbers and symbols all on a page and incomprehensible equations. And we want to show people the meaning behind the math.
Located on Manhattan's East Side, the museum is chock full with all kinds of hands-on displays and activities. So, what are the 5 most interesting exhibits for teens here at the museum?
Well, come on, Scott, how about I show you?
All right. Our first stop is the human tree. That's what you turn into when you step on the red circle. You can change the seasons and even create intricate combinations. The point of this exhibit is to teach about fractals.
A fractal is where you take one unit and you repeat it over and over again, ever smaller each time. And so you'll notice that each generation of this tree is another copy of you and of me. We're just getting smaller and smaller.
When it comes to learning about patterns, you might say this exhibit on fractals is tremendous. Let's move on to number 4.
So let's come to the 4th exhibit now, number 4. This is called Harmony of the Spheres. And this is an exhibit that focuses on the relationship between math and music. And the way it works is that each one of these balls represents a chord that has 3 notes, which is also called a triad. So when I touch that, we're hearing a chord.
Depending on which spheres you touch, you can actually create not just different music, but different emotions.
I can show you that on this side we have a minor chord, so that sounds kind of sad, whereas on this side we have a major chord, and that sounds kind of happy.
So it's musical math then?
It's musical math, and this is one of 2 music and math exhibits we have in the museum. There are a lot of relationships between math and music.
Next is number 3. The math square is a colorful way to show relationships. For example, here it's drawing a border around each kid to literally prove a point.
That border shows all the points on this square that are closer to them than to any other person on the square. So you might have a very big portion if there's nobody near you, or if there's lots of people standing around, you'll all get very small portions.
Okay, well, do you mind if I try it out?
Not at all. Let's step right on. You've got a very big region. I've got a smaller region because I'm sharing with this young man.
Next on our must-see list is a high-tech sculpture competition. The first step is designing an image on the computer.
The best part about this is not only is she creating something beautiful, but we can then print those on our 3D printer.
Not every design gets printed. Visitors vote for their favorites. The images receiving the most votes are transformed from computer images into physical objects.
So this actually prints out what kids have drawn in a 3-dimensional shape.
Yes, it actually builds by putting a layer after a layer after a layer.
The objects created by the 3-dimensional printer become part of the exhibit.
When we return, we'll find out what the most popular exhibit is here at the Museum of Mathematics.
We're touring the 5 most popular exhibits at the Museum of Mathematics. So far, we have learned about fractals, musical triads, the properties of a square, and designing in 3 dimensions. Proof positive that math is anything but dull.
At first I was kind of skeptical. I was like, a museum about math, but then we came in and it was so much fun.
A lot of people, when they hear about a museum for math, may think it's boring. So what did you think?
I thought it was pretty cool.
So would you tell other kids to come here, and what would you tell them was fun about it?
Everything.
And the top exhibit here at the Museum of Mathematics?
Now, this is the most popular exhibit in the whole museum. This is our square wheel tricycle exhibit, and what's so surprising about it is that you can ride on bicycles that have square wheels, and your ride is perfectly smooth.
The secret is the design. The wheels and the bumpy surface they ride on fit together with mathematical precision. For all you math mavens, it has to do with what's called a catenary curve.
And so the square wheels, the point of the wheel is exactly fitting into the bottom of each hump. And so you get a perfectly smooth ride because the bicycle seat is not going up and down, but the wheel mates perfectly with the track. And that's one example of how mathematics can make the seemingly impossible suddenly possible.
Math at its finest.
Absolutely.
While they say seeing is believing, I needed a test ride to be convinced. Amazingly, it was just like riding a bike with round wheels. No question about it, all the exhibits here add up to a fascinating experience. At the National Museum of Math, I'm Scott for Teen Kids News.
Well, that wraps up our show for this week. But we'll be back with more Teen Kids News next week. See you then.